Hi. Is this your, hi? You're Fatima, right?
Yes. Hi.
Hi, I'm Janet. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Great. What do you take pictures for? The videos you ask?
Oh, I'm making videos for real estate, like to talk about real estate and to do some videos of houses. So for my marketing. And so I was looking for some houses to do some indoor videos. I've already made some other videos in the office, but I want actual videos in a house.
Nice. If I see something, I'll let you know.
Okay, thanks.
I hate showing up.
How's it going?
Fatima, where are your videos? Are they on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok?
Instagram.
Okay, I just requested you. Okay. Sorry, Kristen.
No, you're fine. We're gonna have kind of a boring class today because disclosures are long and boring, but they're important. We're gonna go over the two most important disclosures today: the transfer disclosure statement and the seller property questionnaire. So if you are a listing agent, I highly recommend having the seller fill out the seller disclosure package prior to going to market. And the reason for that is because, let me close my door real quick. I can hear so much going on outside in my office. Okay. All right. So the reason for that is because you might find out stuff about the property you are going to list that you may want to disclose or take some action to better protect sales price and better, come up with a sales strategy. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and share screen now and start sharing the transfer disclosure statement. Come on. I can do this. Who is the host? I can't share my screen. Hey, Alfredo. Alfredo? I'm asking Alfredo to make me the host. All right, I think I'm gonna walk over to Alfredo's desk because I can't share this. Give me just a moment, guys. Sorry about that. All right. Sorry for the delay, guys. This one. Can everyone see the real estate transfer disclosure statement?
Yep.
Okay, great. So we'll refer to this from now on as TDS. All right, so the TDS must be filled out by the seller. All disclosures must be completed by the seller. So what does that mean? It means literally filled out by them. You cannot, as the agent, even write down or type something for them verbatim if they're telling you what to write on there. That is the rule, that is the law. So no completing these for your clients. The only sections you should be completing are the top portion here, these boxes in this section, and filling out signature lines, dates. Okay. So it is worth mentioning that the TDS is a non-waivable disclosure required by law by the state for all real estate sales. That being said, there is an exception for trustees and parties that have never lived in the property, have never been to the property, never seen the property. Sometimes your seller has never even seen the property. And if that is the case, you may use an ESD, exempt seller disclosure statement. If the seller is a natural seller, an individual person, even if they've never seen the property, they may still have to complete the TDS. There is a section in California Civil Code which goes over the requirements for that. So after we go over the TDS and the SPQ today, I will pull up an ESD for you guys to take a look at, and I'll give you the Civil Code section so that you can look it up yourselves if you ever feel that you might have the rare instance where your seller is going to use an ESD versus a TDS document. Okay. So here we're going to list the city.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
Thank you. So if the seller has leased the place, let's say for the last couple of years, or hasn't been there for like the last year, then what?
I think that they still need to complete a TDS report, but I'll go ahead and give you that that section that you can look up and read through.
Thank you.
And even at that point, you know, I probably wouldn't have a seller do the ESD unless they sought legal counsel and they got advised that an ESD would be sufficient for their transaction.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so the legal city name is going to go in here, and then the county, and then the street address, and then this date. So this is the date that the seller fills out this document, okay? It's important to note that a seller is only required to fill this out to the best of their ability, to the best of their knowledge. If they've forgotten something, if they're uncertain about something, if they don't know, that is okay. Nothing should be left blank. And if something is unknown, that should be indicated on the document. So here under substituted disclosures is an area where agents very often make mistakes. Okay, so it says that the following disclosures and other disclosures required by law, including natural hazard zone disclosure report, have or will be made in connection with this real estate transfer and are intended to satisfy the disclosure obligations on this form where the subject matter is the same. All right, so you don't really need to understand this, okay? What I need you to do is always check this box. Inspection reports completed pursuant to the contract of sale or receipt for deposit. Why are we checking this one and not no substituted or additional inspection reports or disclosures? Well, that's because in our state, just as they noted up here, natural hazard zone disclosure reports are required by law. So you're always going to at least have that pursuant to the contract of sale, pursuant to the terms of our sales contract. So you can check the first box and leave it at that. Okay. All right. So the seller discloses the following information with the knowledge that even though this is not a warranty, prospective buyers may rely on this information in deciding whether. John. John.
Hi, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Thanks. Okay. whether and on what terms to purchase the subject property. Seller hereby authorizes any agents representing any principals in this transaction to provide a copy of the statement to any person or entity in connection with any actual or anticipated sale of the property. So what this is saying here is that agents can provide this prior to contract or as part of the transaction, okay? It's not customary to provide disclosures to buyers prior to the time they make an offer, but you may want to do so that they can possibly submit an offer without the contingency of seller disclosure, something like that. I also, if there were issues with the property, whether or not they had been repaired or mitigated, if it was complicated, I very well may want to provide prospective buyers with copies of disclosures, including this document, and explanations that would be attached to or on this document explaining. All right, then under here, this is another section that is often missed, is to indicate whether the seller is or is not occupying the property. Why do you think that's important, guys?
Because it determines lots of things, like it determines the price, because, well, if someone has,
I think it just, it basically says, you know, it indicates that if the seller is living in the property, there's probably a higher level of knowledge that is to be expected, right? John.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I
Mute yourself, John, mute. Okay. So yeah, if a seller is living in a property, they should be held to a higher level of knowledge of the property. And so if they're not living in the property, you know, the buyer should just know that maybe the seller doesn't know as much as they might expect otherwise. All right, section A is a section to check boxes for items that are within the property. So if there's like range and oven, it goes into some unusual things as well. You know, so a lot of common things, a lot of unusual things. They would just check the box for what's there. Down below here, this is a fill-in section. So again, I want to remind you that there should be no blank spaces on this document. So usually exhaust fans are in kitchens, bathrooms, but if there were none, the seller would write in NA. So you're not supposed to tell your seller per se what to fill in here. The way that I handle, you know, when I know they're entering something maybe incorrect or they have, you know, they're not certain what to fill in, I gently lead them with questions. And so I might say something like, oh, well, a lot of places have exhaust fans in kitchens or bathrooms. Do you have either of those? So I'm sort of leading them to think about the answers. But, you know, I have to be careful with that because I definitely am putting myself at risk and liability if I lead them too much in how to answer these questions. 220 volt wiring. You know, not many sellers are going to know how many volt the electrical wiring is. So if they're, you know, they say unknown, uncertain, that's fine. Fireplaces in, again, no blanks. So if there's no fireplace, you would say NA, or they would say NA. Otherwise indicate what room it's in. Gas starter, roof type, they might not know. Age, it says approximate, they may or may not know. Other, so if there is anything else that they needed to write in here, they could. I've never really used this section. And then for every section in this document, there's going to be a question basically asking about condition. So are there, to the best of your seller's knowledge, any of the above that are not in operating condition? Yes or no. Anytime we check a yes, and there are some places where checking a yes, the answer is self-explanatory. It's really stupid, but we still have to make an indication in the explanation sections below. So, you know, if nothing is, nothing's wrong, everything's in operating condition, they're gonna write no or check no. If they have an issue with something, they're gonna check yes. And then down here below, they're gonna indicate which it is that they is not an operating condition and make a statement basically about what's going on with it. If they know, they may not know. Something may just not be working and they have no idea why. You know, maybe their garage has an automatic garage door opener, but it's not working. So down here, you'd say automatic garage door opener is not working. reason unknown.
Kristen, may
Yes.
I ask a question?
Sure.
So I'll go on video. The section where it says gas starter, when I fill that out, I assume that it's tied to the fireplace, and it's basically whether or not it has an electric switch. Is that correct? Or what is that tying into exactly? And does something have to be added in the comment section for that?
Yeah, the gas starters for fireplace, it doesn't have to be a switch. There are some key gas starters. There are different types. So, you know, almost any gas fireplace is going to have a gas starter. But again, I'm not leading my client on this, right? So I'm just going to ask them, is it gas?
Because many of them have like the knob, you know, the on-off knob that you use the key with. Is that considered a gas starter?
Yeah, they all have a gas starter.
Okay. Got it. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so the next section. I don't like the way that section B is set up. It asks, are you the seller aware of any significant defects, malfunctions in any of the following? And they have to say yes or no. And seller's first indication is always check no. And I'm like, don't check no yet. We haven't even read what they said, what they're asking about. So it's kind of flip-flopped on us. So be aware of that. So, you know, you have them go through, read each one of these. And by the way, guys, this is not a document that is something you can do on DocuSign because we have all these explanations and checkboxes, right? So I usually do this in person or over the telephone with my client, and I have them print the documents, or I bring a printed copy with me. Okay. So
now, Kristen, sorry to interrupt. The glide system, that one has more of an like step-by-step question and answer that they follow, right? So that seems to be a little bit more user-friendly.
But this is something you want to do verbally with your clients. Like you want to do this in person or over the telephone. And any errors in these documents could cause you severe issues in your escrow. So
you wouldn't recommend just sending that glide and having them do it?
I would not, no.
And Kristen, one other question, sorry. At what point, when is the latest that the seller must provide this document to the buyer?
Well, that is set by the term in your contract under the seller disclosure section. So the way it's boilerplate written is 7 days from acceptance. If you are working with an agent like me, I like to have it within 3 days. The reason for that is because I like to read these as the buyer's agent prior to the time my buyer has their inspections. Because if I read anything on here that's concerning, we can ask the inspector to take a closer look at it.
Okay, so like, let's say if I entered into escrow yesterday, then today I should call the agent and ask them right away.
Oh yeah, I always ask right away, but you'll want to check the seller disclosure section also, because whatever's written there is the time frame in which they're required to provide it to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. So Jamie, or is it Jamie or Jaime? Sorry.
It's two of the same, but it's actually Jaime.
Jaime.
Yes.
So you brought up a good point. Like, can you do it on glide? Probably, but it's really, I don't recommend it. You may have questions. I highly recommend making sure you have an interactive experience with your client filling this out, not just to make sure that it's complete and accurate, but also so that you know what's going on. You can explain any issues. You can make any recommendations that, you know, as you're completing these, you might find relevant to properly strategically marketing the property and protecting the sales price.
Now, in the past, what I've done is walk the property with clients, and in some cases, they've corrected some issues that ultimately didn't make it to the TDS. Is that acceptable, or would you recommend having?
There is a section that it has to go on here. It says for past issues that have been remedied.
Okay.
So it would need to make it on here.
To that section. Got it.
John.
I'm sorry.
John, I'm gonna kick you out of class in a second.
Okay. Hold on. I can't. Oh.
I just muted him. Okay. Let's see here. All right, so back to here. Again, if there's any issues under this section here for the explanation, you're going to indicate which. So let's say it was ceilings. You write in ceilings and have them write in their explanation. Now, if for any reason, any of your explanations don't fit in these sections, you can attach like a Word document or a lined sheet of paper to it. You would definitely want to make sure that you indicate what section you are, the explanation on the attached piece of paper is for. So here you would say see attached in this section, and then you would attach that document. Also, if there are any issues, let's say, you know, let's say there was an issue with the electrical system, but it was something that was handled by the seller's insurance company. You would say, you know, electrical system under here, electrical system, see attached. And then instead of having your seller re-explain what happened, you know, they could provide maybe a brief summary. You might want to just have them attach the insurance claim, the documentation. Don't reinvent the wheel. If you have official documentation or official reports, just attach that. Installation of a listed appliance, device, or amenity is not a precondition of sale or transfer of the dwelling. So we're talking about carbon monoxide devices, garage door openers, child-resistant pool barrier that might not be in compliance with current safety standards. Basically, what this document is saying is that homes are not required to update what's there existing to current safety standards. There are some exceptions. So they're talking about carbon monoxide detectors. Well, actually, our state does require that, as does our city. So the city of Los Angeles has more restrictive requirements for transfer of property. We have something called the Certificate of Compliance, and we have a retrofitting company that goes out and does the work and will give a certification, and they are licensed by the city to do so. Let's see here. Section C, are you the seller aware of any of the following? C1, substances, materials, or products which may be an environmental hazard, such as but not limited to asbestos, formaldehyde, radon gas, lead-based paint, mold, fuel, or chemical storage tanks, and contaminated soil or water on the subject property. So what if the home was built in 1925 and the seller says, well, there must have been lead-based paint? What would you tell the seller? How should they fill this out?
That isn't necessarily the case, right? I mean, prior to 1978 is a possibility, but it's not necessarily the case that it has it. So if they don't know, they should answer, I don't know. And it's up to the buyers to exercise their inspection.
Yes, the better answer is, do you know that? The better question to ask the sellers are you sure about that? Do you know that for a fact? Because we're not making conjecture here. We're here to disclose what we absolutely know. We cannot get in trouble for not knowing. We can get in trouble for disclosing information that we're guessing at or might not be accurate, right? So perfect answer. We don't complete anything we don't actually know. Okay. 2, features of the property shared in common with adjoining landowners, such as walls, fences, and driveways, whose use or responsibility for maintenance may have an effect on the subject property. This is pretty common that we have fences that are shared by neighbors, and oftentimes clients have no idea. They know nothing about who's responsible for the maintenance of what. They simply, if they believe that there is, they say yes. Down here, they would say number 2, fence on south side perimeter wall, or fence at south perimeter of lot, is shared with neighbor, and responsibility to maintenance is unknown, or whatever it is. If they know, great. If they don't, they just say that. Okay. 3, any encroachments, easements, or similar matters that may affect your interest in the subject property. So most seller, hello? Okay. So most sellers, they don't know anything about this, but as agents, you should know that most properties have easements on it. Does that mean I'm going to correct my seller if they're checking this no and say, oh, you have utility easements on your property? No, I'm not. I'm not here to influence them. I'm simply here to guide them and help them come to the to the conclusion that discloses what they know to the best of their knowledge. 4, room additions, structural modifications, or other alterations or repairs made without necessary permits. 5, room additions, structural modifications, or other alterations or repair not in compliance with building code. If 5 is a yes, you might have problems selling it. 6, fill, compacted or otherwise on the property or any portion thereof. A lot of times your seller's going to be like, what's that? Well, instead of trying to explain it to them, if they don't know what it is, the answer is no, right?
Kristen, as far as the room additions or stuff done without permits, what if the person lived there, maybe like they owned the property, let's say less than 10 years, and the prior owner, I mean, they don't know whether or not it was done with permit as far as a room addition or stuff that's in compliance with building codes. How should they respond?
If they don't know, they say no. We are only disclosing what you know.
Okay. So they're not held to like such a high standard. They're
only held to disclosing what they know.
Got you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So that is a great question. What if they don't know, but when they purchased it, they didn't investigate thoroughly, and the sellers told them that a bedroom may be done without permits, but they weren't certain? Are they required to then disclose the same information to their buyers when they sell? They are. So if the previous sellers had said to them, hey, this back bedroom may be done without permit, we're not sure. When your seller purchased, they didn't investigate, they didn't figure that out. Now they're going to go sell. They would need to disclose that. Why? They don't know that it's unpermitted, but they know that the previous seller said it might be unpermitted. Does that make sense?
I have a question regarding the fill, because sometimes they ask for clarification. What does that mean? So at that point, are we as agents there as a resource to provide them with clarification on what some of these mean, or what's the best approach?
No. I mean, are you a geological engineer?
I'm not, but would we be able to elaborate in any way just to summarize what this is supposed to mean?
I would let them know that that has something to do with dirt on their lot if I absolutely have to, if they pressed me. But I would just tell them, if you don't know, the answer is no. Okay,
because as an example, in the past, I've elaborated of how sometimes there are foundation issues, and fail can sometimes be placed in property lots to correct that. And so is that too much sharing of information?
I think so. Plus, that's only a small portion of what fill means or could be used for, which could be misleading to them, right? So unless you're going over what fill could be used for, or what it could indicate, or what it could help or hurt if it's not done properly, in all instances, I don't really think that your explanation is necessarily helping them, right?
Yeah, my concern is if they're relying on us as the agents to provide clarity.
But we are agents. We are not a geological engineer. If they need clarity, they can hire a geo inspector.
Right, but I guess I'm just searching for the proper response that wouldn't come across as though we are unaware of what this is, or is the response more of, well, as an agent, I cannot provide added details because I'm not qualified to provide you with this information.
Yeah, I would say that has to do with, dirt and how it can affect the structure or the lot, things like that. If you want further clarification about what that, is asking you, I can certainly give you some referrals for a geological inspector. Sure. Who would be more familiar with that and qualified to answer questions regarding that information.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And there are several sections on both of these documents, by the way, that say that if a seller wants advice regarding how to complete these documents or how to interpret them, that they need to contact professionals or attorneys, that your agent should not be providing information. It says right on these documents. So, if you wanted to start out by showing that seller that might help alleviate some of the concerns you might have about saying, well, I don't really know what that means either, or I'm not qualified to tell you what that means, by simply showing them that you're not allowed to tell them what that means. Let's see here. 7, any settling from any cause or slippage, sliding, or other soil problems. So, you know, you will get sellers who will ask you your opinion about particularly stuff like number 7, and you'll really see your seller's personality at this point, right? Most homes have settling, normal settling. And so, you know, my seller might say to me, well, we have normal settling. Do I say yes or no? And I'm like, well, you have something to say. If it was me, you know, like clearly that's a yes, and you can just indicate that it's normal settling. Whatever, you know, if you have an actual concern or you have something to say, it's better to disclose what you know and over disclose than not. So again, when in doubt, if they have information, even if it's very minor information that might not be an issue, probably better that they just mark it down. Okay, flooding, drainage, or grading problems, major damage to property or any structures from fire, earthquakes, excuse me, floods or landslides. 10, any zoning violations, non-conforming uses, violations of setback requirements. The answer to number 10 is a yes. You might have some problems selling it. 11, neighborhood noise problems or other nuisances. Again, this is one of those that is really subjective. And, you know, you just have to remind your seller, hey, you're filling this out for the buyer. So, you know, anything that could affect desirability or value of the property really needs to be disclosed. It's not my place to make that decision for you as far as judgment call. But again, always better to disclose what you know, even if it's minor, than to fail to disclose something and possibly get sued over it. Okay. 12, CC&Rs or other deed restrictions or obligations. So this is one of those self-explanatory ones that kind of irritate me, but are very important for you to fill out or have the explanation portion filled out. So if the answer is yes, and so if you have a planned unit development or condo, it's always going to be yes, because they're going to be CC&Rs. Literally down here, you're just going to put number 12. There are CC&Rs. Okay. Same thing with 13, homeowners association that has authority over the subject property. If it's a yes, 13, there is an HOA. Same thing with 14, common area. If the answer is yes, there are common areas. If your client wants to list them out, that they can. 15, any notices of abatement or citations against the property. If the answer to this is yes, you definitely want to get on the phone with escrow and title and start getting those all taken care of before you go to the market, I think. You want copies of them. 16, any lawsuits by or against the seller threatening to or affecting this real property, claims for damages by the seller pursuant to section 910 or 914, threatening to or affecting this real property, claims for breach of warranty, claims for breach of an enhanced protection agreement. Your seller's going to know if they have any litigation going on that could affect them or the property. Sometimes there is litigation going on between the HOA and the developer, or the HOA and you know, a condo owner, a unit owner in the building, something like that. So in that instance, you know, your seller might know about that, but not know much about that. So they could say, yes, you know, there's ongoing litigation between a resident and the HOA. You probably want to encourage your seller to obtain documentation from the HOA in relation to whatever that litigation is, and just attach it. You know, just down here, number 16, yes, there's litigation between the unit owner and the HOA, see attached. Don't recreate it. D1, the seller certifies that the property as of the close of escrow will be in compliance with section 13113.8 of the Health and Safety Code by having operable smoke detectors. Guys, who does that in at least City of Los Angeles? Retrofitting inspector, retrofitting company. And how is that certified? What document goes to escrow? What document goes to escrow?
Is that the 9A report?
No, certificate of compliance. The 9A is the Los Angeles building report.
Gotcha.
Both required to close escrow in the City of Los Angeles. All right, so sellers are going to sign. Okay. as the agent, you need to select one of these. So most of the time I don't have my avid yet at this point. I may or may not see anything that I think is a significant issue. If I don't, I'm going to check this box. If I see something that's a significant issue, major settling, you know, something that is very alarming, very apparent to me, very much like the avid, I am going to notate it here, but I'm going to be very qualitative because I am not an inspector. I don't know what's going on at the home. So I'm going to be descriptive in what I see. I'm not making conjecture. I'm not saying what it is. And I'll give you an example. Let's say I see a lot of discoloration on a wall and, you know, like staining that looks like past moisture stain, stuff like that. I might say, you know, wall and back bathroom seems to be discolored and, you know, stained, right? That's very qualitative. I'm not going to say, oh, these there are dark marks that could be mold. I'm not a mold inspector. I'm not qualified to make that statement. What I am qualified to do is make a physical observation. Okay, gonna sign, gonna date. Yes.
Christen, on this one, at times I've selected see the attached agent visual inspection to Avid, but I completed soon after this has been completed, and in the end it's submitted in combination to the buyers and the agent. So is that acceptable, or does the Avid have to be the same date or prior to this being completed for that to be accurate?
That would be acceptable as long as you don't sign and date it until you have the Avid. Make sense?
So then the date on this has to be the same or later than the Avid, correct?
Well, if you are attaching the Avid to it, yes. If you check this first box.
So again, what I've done is I have this completed and then dated, signed by the seller, and then I complete my Avid. And when I submit this to the buyer's agent, it goes in combination with the Avid, but they're dated after. Is that acceptable?
It is acceptable if you're not checking this box. If you are checking this box, do not sign and date this until you have your Avid. So this would need to be signed and dated as of or after the date of your Avid. Make sense? I'm always checking the second box. Or because if I want, well, that's not true. I'm checking the first or second box. Why? Because if I feel like I need to use the third box, I'm just going to get the Avid out, break down and do it. If I feel like there's something so apparent that I need to note it, I'm going to go ahead and just do the Avid at the time I'm doing the disclosures.
So then if you do the second box and then you complete the Avid afterward, you don't have to come back and adjust this, right? No. Yeah,
that's fine. Yeah, that's perfect. Hold on. I have someone coming into my office. I'm teaching it now. Bye, Kathy. Sorry, guys. All right. So everybody else is going to sign. Now, remember, I told you it was so important for us to make sure every single section's explanation, everything was checked, completed on this document. And that is because there is law that says a buyer has the right to cancel for at least 3 days after the delivery of this disclosure. Okay. It's basically an automatic ability to cancel. So let's say you delivered this document within the 7-day seller disclosure timeframe that is most customary. Even if the buyer were to lift the seller disclosure contingency, civil law overrides that and says for at least 3 days. So if you are representing the seller and you have a 7-day seller disclosure contingency, what is the latest time frame you should really deliver these disclosures so that you're protecting your seller's purchase or sale? Sorry.
4 days.
That's right. Also, guys, anytime you deliver a seller disclosure outside of the expiration of the disclosure contingency, or even after the buyer has lifted the inspection contingency, a buyer has an automatic 5-day review period. Automatic 5-day review period. That review period reinstates their contingency.
So, Kristen, question on that. So, say they want to cancel because of that 3-day contingency disclaimer you just mentioned, but there's nothing on the TDS for them to call out as a red flag. Can they still cancel?
Yes.
So it's basically their wild card out, right?
Yes. I call it my ace in the pocket. And if I'm the buyer's agent and you missed a spot on this document, I don't tell you about it. I hold it until just in case my buyers need more time, or they get cold feet, or change their mind or something. It is kind of a dick move, but you know, I represent my buyers first and foremost. So if you represent the seller and you guys made a mistake, I'm not telling you, I'm holding it. I will tell you when I'm sure my buyer wants to move forward. So guys, that's why, another reason why I strongly encourage doing these disclosures in person with your seller. All right, I'm going to stop the screen share. I'm going to run to the restroom. And then when I come back, we'll do the seller property questionnaire. Feel free to visit. Sorry about that. Okay.
Hey, Kristen, one last question, if I may. So I know in the past when I've seen these forms completed by the listing agents, I'm representing the buyer, and it's obvious that there's something incorrect. Do you recommend leaving it as is, such as has the property been renovated, or is there an unpermitted room? So do you just leave it alone, or do you talk to the listing agent and address those concerns?
If it was important, like the items that you're discussing, I would have them complete it. I'm only holding those like little nitty gritty dumb questions, like, is there an HOA, when someone didn't, provide the explanation? Yes. Anything important, like an unpermitted area or the renovations that were done, my buyer really needs to know those things. So I'm right away telling the listing agent about that. Yeah, I'm kicking it back to them and saying, I don't even remember the last time I got a seller disclosure package when I was representing the buyer that I didn't kick it back with multiple questions and things missing or errors.
But in the end, if something's incorrect and the buyer in the end is fighting for something that wasn't disclosed, can they hold you as the buyer's agent liable in any way?
Oh, I don't think so. No. Like I said, I'm only holding stuff that's not a big issue if I find an error missing. If I know that something's missing or wrong or misleading or completely just missing from the disclosure package, I'm 100% as the buyer's agent kicking it back to the listing agent right away and saying, hey, I need this to be completed properly.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, share screen. Okay, everybody see it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. All right, so seller property questionnaire. All right, so this form is not a substitute for a real estate transfer disclosure statement. It is used by the seller to provide additional information when a TDS is completed. If seller is exempt from completing a TDS, seller should complete an exempt seller disclosure statement. That was that document I was referring to earlier, or may use this form instead. Even if you're doing an ESD, you'll still want to do the seller property questionnaire. So seller makes the following disclosures with regards to the real estate property or manufactured home described as, here's going to be the address, assessor parcel number, also referred to as APN, situated in the city, the legal city, guys. So if it's Venice, what's going here?
Los Angeles.
Thank you. County of, and again, as the seller's agent, you're completing this top section, but the seller is going to complete the rest of this. Disclosure limitation. The following representations made by the seller are, made by the seller and are not the representations of the agents, if any. This disclosure statement is not a warranty of any kind by the seller or any agents and is not a substitute for inspections or warranties the principals may wish to obtain. The disclosure is not intended to be part of the contract between the buyer and seller. Unless otherwise specified in writing, broker and real estate licensee or other person working with or through broker has not verified information provided by seller. A real estate broker is qualified to advise on real estate transactions. If buyer or seller desires legal advice, they should consult an attorney. Okay. Note to seller. The purpose of this document is to tell the buyer about known material or significant items affecting the value or desirability of the property and to help eliminate misunderstandings about the condition of the property. The seller should answer based on actual knowledge and recollection at this time. Something that you do not consider material or significant may be perceived differently by a buyer. Think about what you would want to know if you were buying the property today. Read the questions carefully and take your time. If you do not understand how to answer a question or what to disclose or how to make a disclosure in response to a question, whether on this form or a TDS, you should consult a real estate attorney in California of your choosing. A broker cannot answer the questions for you or advise you on the legal sufficiency of any answers or disclosures you provide. So guys, if you're doing a TDS and SPQ, these instructions, they apply to both documents, right? So if you're filling out a seller disclosure package with your sellers, which document do you want to start with? This one, seller property questionnaire. 3, note to buyer. The purpose of this document is to give you more information about known material or significant items affecting the value or desirability of the property and help to eliminate misunderstandings about the condition of the property. Something that may be material or significant to you may not be perceived the same way by the seller. If something is important to you, be sure to put your concerns and questions in writing. So buyers oftentimes have questions in relation to what they see on these two disclosures, or because they're not seeing something that they want to ask or are concerned about. So there are multiple ways to submit these questions. There's a CAR form for it, VMI, or you could just write it up in an email, or you could write it up in you know, a Word document and attach it and send it over to the listing agent. Whatever it is fine, but it has to be in writing, okay? And you'll want to make sure that the seller or the seller responds back in writing. Sellers can only disclose what they actually know. Seller may not know about all material or significant items. Seller disclosures are not a substitute for your own investigations, personal judgments, or common sense. Seller awareness. For each statement below, answer the question, are you the seller aware of, by either checking yes or no. Explain any yes answers in the space provided or attach additional comments and check section 18. All right, section 5A, within the last 3 years, the death of an occupant of the property upon the property. So if there's been a death, they'd say yes. Well, what if there was the death of someone who was not an occupant of the property on the property? Would you still disclose that? You would. There's another section to do that. Let's say there was a murder on the property 10 years ago. Would be required to disclose that? Would the seller need to disclose that?
Yes.
Why?
No.
Yes, the answer is yes, 100%.
Yes. Oh.
Because it can affect value or desirability. Now, would we disclose it under 5A? No, we would not. We'll be disclosing it in a different section of this document. We'd still check no under 5A. 5B, in order from a government health official identifying the property as being contaminated by methamphetamine. Here is where I get kind of funny with my clients because this is long and boring, and I ask them if they are Breaking Bad up in here. Ha, 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 ha. Because these documents are, you know, it takes forever. I'm very talked out by the time I'm done doing this. So you can have fun with a couple of these. The release of an illegal controlled substance on or beneath the property. Are you storing any toxic waste for the local chemical factories? Whether the property is located in or adjacent to an industrial use zone. Again, only what the seller knows. They very well may be, but if they don't know that they are, they can check no, and they are not liable for improperly reporting that information because they're doing it to the best of their knowledge. Whether the property is affected by a nuisance created by an industrial use zone, whether the property is located within 1 mile of a former federal or state ordinance location. They probably wouldn't know that even if they were. Whether the property is a condominium or located in a planned unit development or other common interest subdivision. This is one of those no-brainer questions where if the box for yes is checked, the explanation is stupid. It's basically, you know, just stating, yes, the property is a condo. H, insurance claims affecting the property within the last 5 years. Oftentimes this is a yes, even for minor stuff. Again, if if the seller has documentation or can easily obtain documentation from their insurance carrier, I would recommend saying yes, see attached, and just directly attaching a copy of the insurance claim to this document. Okay. I, matters affecting title of the property. J, material facts or defects affecting the property not otherwise disclosed to the buyer. So could we talk about that murder 10 years ago here? Yes. Could we talk about the death of a non-occupant upon the property here? Yes. There are a couple places in this document we can do it. This is one of them. Plumbing fixtures on the property that are non-compliant. plumbing fixtures as defined by Civil Code Section 1101.3. Unless your client is in the legal profession and specializes in builder law, I doubt they're even going to know what that is. I've never seen a client check yes.
Hey, Christen, quick question.
Yes.
So under J, going back to the example of somebody passing in the property, if it's an occupant, natural death beyond the 3-year marker, do you still disclose it under that section?
If it's a natural death beyond the 3-year marker, no. But
Only
if it was a
something
violent,
unusual like a violent death or something that
suicide might really, like that might really affect how a buyer felt about a property. Same with a murder, something like that.
So like natural causes, even if it's a non-occupant beyond the 3-year marker, you still wouldn't disclose here.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to sign off, so thank you so much for
You're very welcome.
I did have one last question, if I may, before I go. If somebody is non-English speaking, they can't read the forms, but somebody is translating for them, or if I translate for them, is that acceptable, or is it preferable that they fill out a form they understand and can read?
Ooh, I don't know the answer to that. I don't think that these documents are provided in Spanish. That would be a great question for Michael Rosales, our broker.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Thanks again.
You're welcome. Okay. Where were we? Page 2, repairs and alterations. So 6A can be lengthy, especially if it's a flip or something that's been heavily remodeled. It's just asking about any alterations, modifications, replacements, improvements, remodeling, or material repairs on the property, including those resulting from home warranty claims. So generally speaking, if you check yes to this box, almost always this explanation line is not going to be long enough. You'll need to attach something. B, any alterations, modifications, replacements, improvements, remodeling, or material repairs to the property done for the purpose of energy or water efficiency improvement or renewable energy. C, ongoing or recurring maintenance on the property. And I love it. They didn't used to have this. So for example, drain or sewer clean out, tree or pest control maintenance service. They may also have pool service. They may also have, I'm sure they have landscaping maintenance done here. Any part of the property being painted within the last 12 months. And again, kind of silly, because if you are answering that on section 6A, and you also have to answer on section 6D, does that mean you have to explain it twice for the explanation portion? Yes, yes, it does. Okay. Whether the property was built prior to 1978, if the answer is yes, you're going to say, yeah, the property was built either prior to 1978 or property was built in 1951, whatever it was. If yes, were any renovations, i.e. sanding, cutting, demolition of lead-based paint services started or completed, they may not know that there was any lead-based paint. So, they could say yes or no. If it's yes, then we'll need to know if that was done in compliance with EPA renovation rules. Section 7, structural systems and appliances. Are you, the seller, aware of A, defects in the following, including past defects? Okay, a key word under 7, past defects that have been repaired. Heating, air conditioning, electrical, plumbing, including the presence of polybutylene pipes, water, sewer, waste disposal or septic system, sump pumps, well, roof, gutters, chimney, fireplace, foundation, crawl space, attic, soil, you name it, it's there. Okay. The leasing of any of the following on or serving the property: solar, water system, water purifier, alarm, or propane tanks. Guys, if the answer to B, 7B is a yes, you'll need to probably get copies of the lease agreement between the homeowner and the company to find out if you can even sell the property in a way that makes sense for the seller. They may have to pay this company off an obscene amount of money. It may or may not be transferable to the new buyer. You'll need to know what the terms are so that when you market the property for sale, you can make the buyer aware of what those terms are right away, so that you don't end up in escrow and end up canceling because the buyer doesn't want to assume the terms of whatever that lease agreement is. 7C, an alternative septic system on or serving the property. I don't know about you, but I have done some even newer homes up in the hills, and I wouldn't have known they were on septic, even though I'm the listing agent and I need to disclose that. And there are special disclosures for properties with septic tanks, unless I had actually sat down and done this disclosure package with my seller. So if there's a septic, they'd say yes. Again, anything that's a yes is going to have an explanation. But very important for me to know, it's something that also needs to be marked on the MLS, but not something that's apparent to the naked eye. So I wouldn't know unless I was doing this with them prior to going on the MLS. 8, disaster relief, insurance, or civil settlement. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Water related and mold issues. So asking about water intrusion into any part of the physical structure of the property, leaks in appliances, pipe, slab, or roof, standing water, drainage, flooding, underground water, moisture, water-related soil settling or slippage on or affecting the property. Not just the house, on the property. 9B, any problem with infestation of mold, mildew, fungus, or spores, past or present, on or affecting, again, the property, not just the structure. 9C, are there any rivers, streams, flood channels, underground springs, high water table, floods, or tides on or affecting the property or neighborhood? 10, pets, animals, and pests. Are there any pets on the property? So of course, everyone's pets, if they have them, yes. The explanation would be like 1 cat, 1 dog, or in my case, 2 cats, 1 dog. Aaron's case, 2 dogs. Oh no, you have your tenant too, 3 dogs. Okay. B, problems with livestock, wildlife, insects, or pests on or in the property. A lot of people get freaked out by this, but most of the time the answer is yes. I have issues with bees at my house all the time. I don't have issues with rats, but most people in LA do. I don't have an issue because I have 2 cats, and rats stay away from cats. But we have possums, you know, like I would probably need to disclose that. Almost every home here has issues. You know, again, when in doubt, the seller should just go ahead and disclose anything that they think could be of concern to a buyer. 10C, past or present odors, urine, feces, discoloration, stains, spots, or damage in the property due to any of the above. Oh man, I have sold a couple of nasty hoarder houses in my day. And, you know, the seller comes in here to 10C and checks no. And I'm looking around and smelling and I'm like, that should really be a yes. But I am not about to have that conversation with anyone. It's not up to me. They're filling it out the way they see fit. 10D, past or present treatment or eradication of pests or odors or repair of damage due to any of the above. If so, when and by whom? You know, it's asking if so, when and by whom. That's kind of explanatory, but again, everything needs to be completely explained in a detailed manner, you know, as best as possible down here in this explanation section. Otherwise, you're going to get a sneaky agent like me who holds this and can get a ridiculous unfounded cancellation out of you if something goes wrong for my buyer. 11, boundaries, access, and property use by others. So A, any surveys, easements, encroachments, or boundary disputes. B, use or access to the property or any part of it by anyone other than you, with or without permission for any purpose, including but not limited to using or maintaining roads, driveways, or other forms of ingress and egress or other travel or drainage. Okay. C, use of any neighboring property by you. 12, landscaping, pool, and spa. So A is diseases or infestations affecting trees, plants, or vegetation. B, operational sprinklers on the property, yes or no. If so, if yes, are they automatic or manually operated? And then if yes, are there any areas with trees, plants, or vegetation not covered by the sprinkler system? And you'd still have to have the seller come down here to the explanation section and basically restate all of that, because this is one of those no-brainer questions where the answers are completely indicative of the explanation. Same thing with C and D. It's in relation to a pool or a spa, and then is there, you know, a heater for either one? Is it operational? E, past or present defects, leaks, cracks, repairs, or other problems with sprinklers, pool, spa, waterfall, basically water features, including, you know, the equipment that goes with them. 13, condominium, common interest development and other subdivisions. So the first one is if there are any pending or proposed dues increases, special assessments, rule changes, insurance availability issues, or litigation by or against, or fines or violations issued by a homeowner association or architectural committee affecting the property. Again, this is information that not only is going to be important to a buyer, but is going to be extremely important to you as the listing agent to know the answer to for when you enter the property on the MLS and when you discuss the property with any potential buyers and their agents. 13B, any declaration of restrictions or architectural committee that has authority over improvements made on or to the property. You know, these are all kind of no-brainer questions. Any improvements made on or to the property without the required approval of an architectural committee or inconsistent with any declaration of restrictions or architectural committee requirement. This is actually pretty common, guys. Anyone have any idea what is the rule with renovation to a condo unit that homeowners break the most? A lot of HOAs will not allow hardwood floors, and a lot of homeowners put them in anyway. And then the HOA, when the property goes on the market and they see pictures of those hardwood floors that are all over the internet now, people get upset and it causes problems. Just because you see hardwood floors in units in a HOA building, don't assume that that is allowed. Make sure you check the rules and regulations from the HOA. 14, title, ownership, liens, and legal claims. 14A, any other person or entity on title other than the seller signing this form. If your seller ever says yes to this, you're probably going to need some additional documentation, or you probably need someone else to be signing your stuff as well. You know, if there's someone on title, but they're passed away and the correct legal avenues have been used to transfer title of the property or are in the process, can you still list the home? I would check with the title rep. 14B, leases, options, or claims affecting or related to title or use of the property. A lot of people don't know this, but you know, if a homeowner leases their unit or their home out, any potential buyer is going to be subject to upholding the terms of that lease until the expiration of that lease, and maybe beyond if the property has rent control. 14C, past, present, pending, or threatened lawsuits, settlements, mediations, arbitrations, tax liens, mechanic liens, notice of default, bankruptcy, or other court filings or government hearings affecting or relating to the property, homeowner association, or neighborhood. The answer to this is yes. You're going to need to do some research, figure out what that is. If it's stuff in relation to liens, title can help you with that. Anything else? I don't know. Definitely talk to Michael Rosales. D, any private transfer fees triggered by a sale of the property in favor of private parties, charitable organizations, interest-based groups, or any other person or entity. I don't quite know what this means myself, but your seller probably will if they're checking yes to this. Same thing with section E. I don't know what a PACE lien is. I think it's some sort of government or state government loan, but I haven't seen any here. Anything like this is going to show up on title. So when you take a listing, definitely open a title report with your title rep as well. Review that title report with the title rep, and anything like this that shows up will show up if there is one, because it's recorded against the title of the loan. You'll be able to see the documents, read them, and you can learn about it if necessary at that time. What are you smiling about, Erin? No, tell me, what are you smiling about? Let's see here. The cost of any alteration, modification, replacement, improvement, remodel, or material repair of the property being paid by an assessment on the property tax bill. 15, neighborhood. So it's a very big, long section about neighborhood noise and nuisance. So, you know, a seller might say, oh, I probably don't need to disclose that, you know, there is noise from traffic. It's not like I live next to a highway because I live in the city of Los Angeles. Well, I mean, section 15 is giving some examples that are really common in, you know, city life. So I would say, yeah, well, they are specifically calling them out. So you might want to go ahead and sort of read through these and note anything that you think might be, you know, knowledge worthy for the buyer, and go ahead and put them in the explanation section. 16, governmental, ongoing or contemplated eminent domain condemnation, annexation, or change in zoning or general plan that applies to or could affect the property. It's probably going to cause you issues with selling this home. You'll want to see Micah Rosales right away if the seller checks yes to this. 16B, existence or pendency of any rent control, occupancy restrictions, improvement restrictions, or retrofit requirements that apply to or could affect the property. So we know that retrofitting requirements affect any property in the city of Los Angeles and a lot of other cities as well. But if the seller doesn't know, that's okay if they're just checking no. C, existing or contemplated building or use moratoria that apply to or could affect the property. So here we have a lot of moratoria or stuff like overlay zones, like historic preservation overlay zone. I do believe there's a more specific question about that. Yeah, there is down here. But, you know, if the seller knows about any of that, they would check yes and, you know, say what it's subject to. They don't necessarily have to explain what that moratoria is. They can simply, you know, call it out by name and make a reference to it. D, current or proposed bonds, assessments, or fees that do not appear on the property tax bill that apply to or could affect the property. E, proposed construction, reconfiguration, or closure of nearby government facilities or amenities such as schools, parks, roadways, and traffic signals. F, existing or proposed government requirements affecting the property that tall grass, brush, or other vegetation be cleared, that restrict tree or other landscaping, planting, removal, cutting, or that flammable materials be removed. So guys, it's actually pretty common to have in our hills areas here on title, a brush clearance requirement. The city requires that homeowners in these areas for high fire safety hazard levels take care of this. And this costs money. So, you know, that might deter a buyer from wanting to purchase a property possibly. So if your seller is telling you, yes, they have brush removal, you'll need to say yes here. And things like this, again, one of the biggest reasons for doing these disclosures directly with your clients is knowing this so that you can disclose it, you know, in private remarks, maybe in the MLS, so that a buyer is not finding out about this after you enter escrow, but prior to entering escrow, so that you're less likely to have a cancellation of any sort or renegotiation. Also, just an FYI, guys, oak trees cannot be removed. There are a couple of other kinds of trees as well, but, you know, just something to think about. So if your seller's like, oh yeah, I was told I can't remove this tree, you know, might be something you want to look into just so that you're a little bit more knowledgeable about the property that you're going to be selling. Any protected habitat for plants, trees, animals, or insects that apply to or could affect the property. Janet, are you still on the call? No? Well, Janet, one of our mentees, she lives in, oh yeah, yeah. You want to tell us all about an HPOZ?
Well, it's very restrictive.
Yeah.
Well, I an HPOZ, any thing you want to do to the outside of the house, you have to get a permit. The windows have to be a certain way. You can't build 2 stories, mansions and stuff. And not only you have to get permits from the city, you have to get approved by HPOZ too.
They have a special architectural committee for HPOZ, right?
Huh?
They have their own special subcommittee for architectural. Yeah. Yeah. So Janet lives in Carthay, and Carthay has a lot of restriction with that. Any HPOZ property does.
Yes.
Any water surcharges or penalties being imposed by a public or private water supplier, agency, or utility, or restrictions or prohibitions on wells or other groundwater supplies. Okay. Section 17. Are you, the seller, aware of any reports, inspections, disclosures, warranties, maintenance recommendations, estimates, studies, surveys, or other documents pertaining to the condition or repair of the property or any improvement on this property in the past, now, or proposed? That's pretty inclusive, right? Or any easements, encroachments, or boundary disputes affecting the property, whether oral or in writing, and whether or not provided to the seller. And then look right here, guys. So if the seller has any reports, what do you guys got to do? Come on, somebody answer for me.
Include them.
Yeah, get them and give them to the buyer. B, any occupant of the property smoking any substance on or in the property. C, any past or present known material facts or other significant items affecting the value or desirability of the property not otherwise disclosed to the buyer. All right, so here's another section under 17C where you can pretty much disclose anything that you think the buyer should know. All right. So if any of these explanations were larger than the explanation space and you had to attach a document, you're going to check section 18. Okay. Everybody's going to sign, and that's that. Those are your 2 most important documents: transfer disclosure statement, TDS, and seller property questionnaire, SPQ. I'm going to see if I have a copy of the ESD so I can give you that language real quick. I don't. Give me 1 second here. Okay, it is California Civil Code 1102, where you can determine whether or not an ESD is sufficient for your seller. You guys got that? Okay. All right. Unless anyone has any questions, which I'm happy to answer for you, we are done.
Thank you, Kristen.
You're very welcome. Welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye, guys. Talk soon.